Are you fascinated by the world of cybersecurity, but often feel like being successful in the field is like climbing a massive, impenetrable wall? Like you need some kind of secret code or superhuman strength to even get your foot on that first foothold? Well, it's time to grab your gear and get ready to climb because you've tuned in to Scaling the Wall, the podcast that breaks down the cybersecurity journey into manageable steps. I'm your host, Will Brooks. Each week, I'll be your guide as we talk to the real people who are living and breathing cybersecurity every single day. We'll hear their stories, learn from their experiences, and gather those golden nuggets of wisdom they've picked up along the way. No jargon, no hype, just real talk about what it takes to build a successful career in this exciting field. So whether you're a student just starting out, a career changer looking for a new challenge, or a seasoned pro wanting to stay ahead of the game, listen in as we scale the wall of cybersecurity together. When I was an account manager at FifthWall, I looked at what you were doing. I was like, I want to do what that guy's doing. And a lot of it was social media, but not so much like social media diva influencer kind of life, but social media like educator, right? And I remember looking at that and I want to do that. And you said, okay, well, we need an account manager right now, but if you have any extra time, do some stuff, right? And that was really formative for me. And I know that was really helpful advice because it was this thing of you have a job, you have to do your job, but also if you can make time for it, again, time blocking, time management, then go do some of the stuff you want to do because there may be opportunity for you in the future. So I know we're talking about social media today. That made me kind of think of that story, just being like, I hated social media coming into FifthWall. I thought it was the bane of my existence, having done youth ministry, seeing it destroy people's lives. But then I saw how you really used it as a platform to teach and grow and educate, excite people around the cybersecurity space. So I'm pumped to be talking about this today. Specifically, maybe we can start this off just by saying, what do you see as the pros and the cons of social media in the MSP business world?
Yeah, and I'm glad you've concentrated around the MSP space because there's a lot to say good and evil about social media, right? I even teach, on like kids and social media, and I think it's an evil, and I think it's a challenge. We struggle with it with our own kids and our own family. We have constant conversations. So that's a story for another day that I'd be happy to have any time. But from the MSP space, I look at it as a huge enabler and a huge potential opportunity in a way that you can short circuit the market, right? Like the old ways of classic marketing are gone. Like go put a newspaper ad out doesn't really do any good, right? Even to some degree, even putting out like paid Facebook promotional posts, how often does that get an ROI? Very rarely, right? And so this world of like what works and what doesn't work is absolutely changing quickly, right? And I think social media is a way, if you understand how it works and what you're trying to do with it, it really can be a powerful tool. And so for me, one of the things I've learned by accident, I am not a social media expert. I don't consider myself a social media influencer. I don't consider myself any of those things, but I do consider myself a nerd with this stuff and I leverage it quite heavily. And my number one thing that I always tell people is stop trying to sell on social media, stop trying to impress, just get out there and educate and teach. And I think one of the reasons for that is when we teach and we educate, we disarm. And when we disarm, we earn trust. And when we earn trust, we earn respect. And that respect says, hey, I would like to know more about what they do. So if you're an MSP today and you're saying, okay, I'm just going to start educating and teaching and helping, what comes with that? Now, all of a sudden, potential clients say, man, that person really knows what they're about. That's super interesting, super helpful. And I'll just tell you one roadblock, Will, that I see over and over is MSPs say, well, I got nothing to teach on. There's nothing I got to share. Oh, really? You think that's true? Trust me, your potential client or current client has no idea the things you know all about. I use this example over and over and over. When ChatGPT came out, you and me, Will, and all the rest of us nerds were on it day one, right? Diving in, the coolest thing ever. 3 months go by, maybe 4, and I'm sitting here at this desk and I get a text from my brother-in-law. And he's like, dude, he's a karate teacher. He owns like 3 karate businesses. He's very successful. And he's like, I'm sitting at my karate conference right now. He goes, there's this new thing that they're doing on the keynote stage. I'm like, what is it? And he's like, guess what? They're building a marketing plan on the fly. They're giving all the social media marketing and messaging and campaigning to build a after class days like the after school daycare, all this kind of stuff. He's like, it's absolutely mind blowing all the stuff it's doing. Just ask me questions. I'm like, is it ChatGPT? He's like, how'd you know? And I'm like, you know what? I missed an opportunity. I thought everyone knew about ChatGPT. His mind was literally blown. And it was his karate keynoter that blew his mind instead of me having that opportunity. My point is, we often undersell what we know and what we think. And we think our clients know about it. They don't. And they don't because they don't listen to the nerds. Your clients don't listen to Wes Spencer. I'm way too nerdy and way too MSP focused. They don't listen to me. They listen to you. And so if it takes you parroting the things that Will Brooks says or I say or someone else says in the industry, but saying it in a language the client will understand, that's really powerful. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so that's where that education is just critically important.
Yeah. I mean, where do you see that some of the roadblocks there? If you're going to educate on social media, I mean, do you see MSPs running into, or I guess not even what do you see? What do you suspect might be roadblocks for MSPs then of why they wouldn't get on there and start using it or for that purpose?
Check yourself on a lot of these things. You hit pause on each of them. Just think about, is this me? It's analysis paralysis. So what I just mentioned, like, what do I actually share and speak about? Speak about what you should be a parrot. None of us, very rarely, how many of us are actual Simon Sineks, that really come up? And I don't even think Simon is all that unique. Like, a lot of us come up with things that have been retread over and over and over with our spin on it, our local language and vernacular in it. So understand that your writer's block should not exist because you should be constantly parroting things. So just as an example, from two conversations I had today, I have a little green sticky note thing that I keep over here. You can't see it, of ideas that come up that I'm going to put on social media that I've had from conversations. So one of them is burnout. And I'm going to talk a little bit about burnout, where it comes from. Another one is what qualifies somebody to go from a tier 1 to a tier 3. How do you know that? Have you ever defined it? A little bit of our earlier conversation. And so I just understand that you should constantly have a flux of things to be talking about based on the conversations you're having, based on what other people are saying. That's the first one. The second one is people are like, well, I can't do it because I don't have a great camera. I don't have a great mic. Who cares about that? You know how many YouTubers and TikTokers there are with 1 million followers that do everything with their phone? No production value at all. In fact, Mr. Beast, the #1 social media guy in the world, says we go to great lengths to make a lot of our video look like we filmed it with a phone for that reason, because it's authentic and that's what people care about. And then the third thing is right on line with that, be authentic. People want to know Will Brooks. They don't want to know the facade. They want to know what's actually going on. Some of the biggest and best posts I see on LinkedIn are just people being real.
You say people want to know Will Brooks, and that's why 80% of my content is trolls and memes, but that's just who I am as a person. But I think you're right. The authenticity piece is maybe the most crucial. And, going back to when you were talking about kids and social media, and when I was a youth pastor and watching social media and watching a lot of my youth kids on social media, you see that pressure of like, I need to present myself a certain way so that other people will like, I'll get X amount of reactions, X amount of focus. It's like they get upset if they didn't get 50 likes or whatever on a photo or something like that, right? And it's almost like you're painting a false narrative of who you are. And first of all, there's no room for that in business at all. I mean, if you're going to build a business and you're going to claim to be a certain person and act a certain way on social media, then when you actually try to get clients and have conversations with your clients, they're like, you're not the guy I was watching on social media. You're not the girl I was watching on social media. Like, what is this? You're not going to be able to hide behind the screen forever. And I think that's really important. But also the other piece of it is people want that authenticity. Like, they want to know who you are. They value that. And business, as much as it's become more digital, as much as it's grown into a lot of automated AI driven stuff, business will always have a personal element to it. Right. And I just feel like if you eliminate that, if you remove that, and you aren't even being your authentic self in the digital space, then you're just doing a disservice.
Yep. A great book, if anyone wants to read more on this, is Founder Brand. That's a book that Alex and I, my co-founder, had read, and it's just revolutionary for both of us. I don't have it in front of me. It's in my other room, but that's a really good book to read. It's this sort of one of the big theses of the book is like, people care about people, less about brands, right? And so, think about someone like, oh man, I've been following that Will Brooks guy. He's hilarious. I love those memes. They crack me up. But a lot of times he ties it into something that I think is interesting. And then now that I know him and I like him, when he has a real post about something on top of that, I'm like, that's really cool. This guy's great. I like what he has to say. I'm interested. He must be at FifthWall for a reason. They must be good people. If FifthWall is, if I really like Will and I like what he's about, he wouldn't be working for a bad company. So I think now I trust FifthWall because I trust Will. And so you see how this works. And I can just tell you so often when I talk to a potential client, It's like, yeah, man, I've been watching a couple of things you've been doing that's super helpful to us. I automatically know whether they buy Empath or not, we're gonna have a great conversation because they know who I am. They know that I'm here to help them and to teach them and to educate them and not primarily here to sell them. And I'm telling you, man, it's a world of difference. And MSPs can do the same thing. It doesn't all have to be social media, by the way. You can go join some chamber events and talk about this kind of stuff, right? You can do this at other like nonprofit areas. You can sit down with clients in a current meeting and just talk to them about things that matter and what's going on. Like there's a lot of ways you can do this. Here's an example. I keep doing book references, but my friend Ann Westerheim, she wrote this book, Cybersecurity for Main Street. This is not made for Will Brooks or Wes Spencer. This is made for her clients. I bought it because it's an awesome book and I want to support Ann. But what's so good about this, she uses this all the time. And the book itself is simply written. It talks about easy things like email security, right? And just very simple things that absolutely this is a help to anybody. It's in a non-technical role. And she uses this in powerful ways to open up new business and to help others. And whether someone goes with Ikaru or not, she knows that book is going to help them and make it better. And so just so many examples of how this can all work. When you focus on education first, helping someone first, everything else will fall in place.
And being yourself first, like putting yourself out there. You know, we talked about earlier in an earlier episode, we brought up the confidence component for MSPs. And I do think there is that element of, there are some MSPs who are fantastic at sales. There are other MSPs who find it very difficult. And oftentimes, at least for myself, even when I've been in sales roles, I found it difficult initially because I felt the pressure to sell. I mean, there is a pressure to sell. You have KPIs, you have quotas, you have metrics you have to hit. So there is a pressure to sell, but I have found my sales success has always come not from me trying to close a deal, like just be that annoying guy on the wall. Now there are some people who can ride that close train, forever, but I'm the kind of guy I found as soon as I was myself and entered into conversations with people, just like you said, and built trust to the point where they're like, oh, I like this guy. And then they started to learn what I do. And it is a bit more of a long game. Let's be real. It can be a bit more of a long game because you have to develop an identity with this person and a relationship with this person. So, but at the end of the day, they come back and they say, they think, oh, cyber insurance, that Will guy talked to me about cyber insurance. I want to talk to him. It's not. So when they think cyber insurance, now they're thinking Will, now they're thinking FifthWall. They're not thinking, let me go to Google and find someone else, right? They already have that point of reference. And that, like you said, going to a chamber of commerce, going to a Kiwanis club or, something like that, where you have people who you're just building relationships with. And when they think now cybersecurity for their business, they're thinking you. I think there is benefit to that. And that's where the education component comes in, and also just being able to connect with people. And maybe that's it. I mean, wasn't that the initial point of social media to begin with, is to connect with people when you couldn't connect with them in person?
As far as I know, absolutely it was the reason. Yep. And so I'm with you. And I think that's so much of it comes down to that. I hear often from MSPs, I wish I just had more at bats. And then they'll go and they'll hire some third party outsourced call center and they come back with terrible leads and no one that's interested. And they drop thousands of dollars into this, maybe tens of thousands of dollars into this with no result. I'm like, well, yeah, because you had some generic person calling with a generic message about, let's be honest, a generic MSP. Not very interesting. If you spend your time being known in your community, known around you, it works. I'll give you an example of this. I did an event way up in just outside of Schenectady, New York, for a friend of mine, Tush Nikolaj. And he called me one day. He said, "Hey, I'm running this cyber event. Any chance you can come out to it?" I said, "I'd love to, Tush." He's like, "I'd love for you to speak at it." So I walk in thinking it's going to be a classic, 15 people, your normal event, and 15. I walk in and I kid you not, there's almost 300 people there. The room is packed.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, Tush, how many of these people did you have to you guys must have been calling and just hitting hard on this because this never happens. He goes, no. He goes, I just called all my friends, whether they use me or not. And I just said, I'm having this event. I'd love for you to come. And I'm like, so you have 250 people that came because you called and asked them and invited them? He said, yeah. I'm like, so you must spend a lot of your time relationship building. He goes, it's all I do. It's all I do. I'm like, that's it. It's easy to say. Now, I will tell you, I'm weak at relationship building. It's not a strength of mine. I'm an introvert by nature. And so for me, social media becomes an easy way to do it because I can do a one-to-many off social media. So going back to why it's so useful, But some people may not need it as much as someone like me, and because they are like a tush and can just do a great job of building relationships in person, right? So anyway, I think that's what so much of it's about, and that's what I try to focus on is just constantly help, constantly teach, constantly educate. Don't be pretentious. You can have a little, you can have a little fun doing it. You can joke around. You can have a little spicy takes here and there, but man, when you start doing a good job of that, it pays itself off in dividends.
Yeah, Wes, when people see someone who's, and I love that introvert mindset because I'm not an introvert. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is go to these conferences. I know I'm going to see all my friends who I don't get to see most of the time because I work remote. I'm going to make new friends, and it's going to be fantastic. So now, eventually, I go to a conference, I'll have 5,000 friends. It's going to be great. Forget Facebook. But, there is this component where, let's say you're not that way, and you can now go onto social media, say, I'm going to be someone, I'm going to be myself. And in being myself, people are going to come to know me, and they're going to trust me, and they're going to listen to what I have to say, and they're going to be interested in what I have to say. And I mean, there's a laundry list of people I can think of who are doing this really well right now. And especially for the MSP space, where prior to being in this space, I thought LinkedIn was just a place you went when you needed a job. So it is a place now where I've learned that actually the professional network can be fantastic. You have to kind of sift through some of the influencer nonsense, the classic, I did this and then I did this and you can do that too. Like, forget that nonsense. Just be you. So I really appreciate what you had to say there. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Maybe the last thing is just be consistent. Like, some people are in the hard and fast camp of like post every day. I don't post every day. I post when I'm inspired, but I do make it a point to stay in front of it. And I think that's one of the biggest things is don't try it once and off you go. I was talking to Eric Bowles actually yesterday about this. He's actually friends with Gary Vee. He's known Gary way before Gary was like famous. And he said one day, I still have it saved on my phone. He said, I have the message when Gary texted me. He goes, hey, did my 43rd wine review or whatever, because he started wine reviews. And it had 43 views. That was it, 43. Now anything Gary does is like 43 million, right? And so the whole point was like, be consistent. Like, it doesn't matter if what you do has 4 likes. I would rather have 4 likes for decision makers and people that are attracted to what I'm trying to talk about than 400 likes for people that are totally disinterested and not in my market, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, just be consistent with it and just know that it takes some time to cultivate and build. But if you are consistent with it, it is a very, very powerful thing and costs you nothing but your time.
Scaling the Wall is brought to you by FifthWall Solutions, a cyber insurance company that partners directly with MSPs to make cyber insurance more accessible to their clients than ever. Check us out at fifthwallsolutions.com/MSP. If you like what you heard today, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or in the Spotify app. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.